Here's why you should care about the Russian-made Swift Kite by Elf, the price point, and the fact that it flies really well. While the Swift is not perfect, as we did run into some issues, we urge you to watch this video to the end and make your own opinion. As always, we used a variety of kiters for our tests. We ran back-to-back tests to compare the Flysurfer SOUL 12-meter and Sonic 11-meter, and we flew the kites in various wind conditions, ranging from under 10 knots to over 20 knots, using twin tips and hydrofoils. The backstory to us reviewing this kite is that this summer some of Toronto's top foil boarders who've flown foil kites for over a decade switched to the Swift Kite. They had extremely good reviews about the kite, so we decided to give it a try ourselves. Elf Kites sent us a 12-meter kite for demo. From a technical point of view, the Swift Kite sits between Flysurfer SOUL and Sonic in terms of aspect ratio, and it certainly feels that way. The kite handles more like a SOUL when it comes to turning ability, and in terms of power acceleration, it feels more like a Sonic. A downside to us, but maybe not to others, is that the Elf kites come without a bar. We used the Flysurfer Force Control bar with 26-meter lines on all three kites, and we had to trim the bar for the Swift a little bit. Launching. The Swift appears to inflate the fastest out of all three kites that we compared, with the Sonic being the runner-up and the SOUL inflating the slowest. Most importantly, none of the kites tested suffered from folding wing tips during hot launches like this Ozone kite or the Flysurfer Sonic 2. First impressions.
I tried today Elf. I like it so far, but I would like to compare to SOUL, that's 12 meter, right? So 12 to 12.
I only have two Elves. I have a 10 and 12, and compared to my 10 and 12 SOULs, hands down the Elf 12 is a better kite. There's no comparison. It's higher aspect, it's speedier, it's sportier.
First impression with the Elf Swift, I don't really want to say this, but it's an ugly kite.
For the Russian kite, I would say so overall it's not bad.
Just did a quick comparison with the Elf 12 meter, and then I took the Flysurfer SOUL 12 meter. So actually the Elf was quite impressive. It definitely feels like a heavier, gruntier kite, which I kind of like.
And that's the nice thing about the Elf, it's got grunt. Splice this, something else.
Relaunching. During our tests, we had zero issues relaunching the Swift Kite. It was as easy as relaunching the SOUL. Sonic, on the other hand, requires a little bit more technique to relaunch. One rider, who owns his own Swift Kite, did run into issues.
You have to do a few more water rescues. So it can fold up, and if it folds up, it often gets stuck folded on the water. So because the bridles are not of the same quality with splicing, then the roughness doesn't allow it to open up on the water sometimes. So if you're riding it, it's not a problem if you keep it in the air.
What Kent said makes sense, as the bridles do look rough, but more on that later. To be fair, no foil kites are 100% relaunchable, but stuff happens. The footage you're witnessing now is one of the worst things we've seen happen to a foil kite. Well, that's not actually true, as this once happened to our friend's 12-meter SOUL. Bottom line is that both the SOUL and Swift kites are extremely good at relaunching, and very rarely do they have issues with the canopy getting tangled in the bridles or having any tips collapse. On the other hand, the Sonic does suffer from folding tips, and we've witnessed the canopy getting stuck in the bridles, especially if you're not an experienced foil kite pilot. Raw power.
So I just tried SOUL after Elf, and these two kites are a little bit different. That one is more powerful, not more, a little bit powerful.
The Russian kite has definitely more power. You feel like you can do a lot more things with it.
Comparing all three of them, I would say the Elf had a lot more power. I don't know if that's fair to the Sonic, because Sonic was a little bit smaller, but
today I jumped about 2 meters higher on Elf, and I think the hang time was a bit higher on Elf as well. But that's again could be because Elf was 12 meter and Sonic was 11. I'm not sure about wind conditions too. It felt like it was more dominant when I was flying Elf.
I felt like it's got a little bit more power than the SOUL, but it feels a bit more, I'd say, rough on the edges. Like I felt like SOUL is a bit more polished up.
Handling and turning.
When you're going with the SOUL, you feel every little gust, and depending on who you are, you might appreciate that or you might not like it. For me personally, actually the Elf, in terms of when it was going, I enjoyed.
The SOUL's jerkiness is a good thing, but best handling kite has always been the Ozone R1 V2, I'm sorry to say.
from a turning standpoint of ease of pulling on the bar, the Sonic, then the SOUL, and then the Elf. The Elf, you really have to pull on it hard for it to turn, so it's not as responsive.
The only thing that I didn't enjoy in Soul was the steering. It was, the bar pressure is light, but it has fairly hard steering. To initiate the turn, you have to pull pretty hard, so it gets tiring by the end. Elf is more predictable. It has a light bar pressure and light steering, or medium steering, let's say. Sonic is the lightest out of all of them all. You can basically steer it with one finger. It's so light.
The Russian Kite, you're gonna get beat up a lot faster if you keep riding it for 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours than if you ride a Flysurfer. Flysurfers, nice cruise, nice acceleration, and good control of steering. But for those that like it rough, I think the Russian flag Kite is good.
Now it did turn slower than the 12-meter Soul, so I didn't care for that. I think it had better overall loft than the Soul, but yeah, no, it's a decent kite, to be honest.
The Elf, it's sometimes maybe it's the tune, the bar is not tuned, but I felt like at times like it feels like you're choking the kite if you shade in the bar all the way in.
The Soul is very good. I like the 6 and the 8s for high wind. It'll never do anything untoward. It'll never do anything that's dangerous. It always falls back into the window. In our gusty winds and winter winds, it'll never go in the water. And the same goes for Elf. It just the Elf to me is a little sportier. It's higher aspect. So where I noticed the difference in the Elf most is the 12. That was quite a difference between the 12 Soul and the 12 Elf.
It's a race kite that handles like a Soul. So it doesn't have the punchiness of the Soul. So in that sense, it's a better ride. Yes, definitely a better ride.
If you ask me which one I like the best, it's the Sonic. All right, it's so responsive. It turns quick. Right, there's power when you need it. It's a really nice kite.
I would probably prefer Elf, but Sonic has some nice features as well. It has very light bar pressure and very light steering, which I really like. But the only thing I don't like in Sonic is that it backstalls if you overshoot it.
Construction.
Personally, it flies not so bad. I'm really surprised, right? But after the landing, I decided to take a look on the bridles and the way it's made. Personally, my opinion, quality of entire kite, it's very good. I'm surprised, but I don't know what to say about all this. Like, why we got so many knots? I can understand this is for adjustments, right? But why it's so many and everywhere? Looks like we have to create knots. Knots if something longer or shorter. But why? And why it's so shitty, like stitching quality? For example, in my opinion, what's the point to put all these lengths with adjustment, right? If we have shit stitching here, like for example, in one of the bridle, there is a stitching less than 2 centimeters, which is suck. And it's one only session. What's gonna happen with 64 session? What it will be left out of it? Or I have to create my own bridles. So you guys personally, whatever who design it, idea is perfect, quality of the kite is good, it flies, but this, you have to work on it. We need better quality. Thank you.
Tell me what happened with Kirill.
Oh, I didn't have a chance to try that kite. Well, what I saw, Kirill was recovering from the fall and the kite flagged out. That's it. That's what I saw.
So anyways, in this kite, I was having an amazing time, okay? It was turning, it was fast, it was like powerful. So
it wasn't durable.
Well, I mean, I had a good time. I launched it to the right, I jumped to the right, I landed on my ass, and I had to redirect the kite to go back, and I was about 1.5 kilometers away in 8-degree water. And the next thing I know is just the kite's falling out of the sky. So the first thing that comes to my mind is my chicken loop unhooked, which wasn't the case. Everything was hooked in. I look around and the kite's in the water. Everyone else's kite is up, so I'm like, okay, the wind is still going. The wind didn't die off. And I realized something must have happened with the lines. And I was really hoping it wasn't the bar, okay? So anyways, I started rolling in the kite. I obviously was kind of starting to get freezing my ass off in the water, but swimming back for an hour in an 8-degree water really changes your perception of life, trust me.
It's tangled around my foot. Oh man, that's happened. Yeah, something must have snapped.
When I heard about that accident, it was a bit scary. And we checked to make sure the lines were sewn up, to make sure all the bridles were properly sewn. I understand from Yuri's friend Kirill, whose kite exploded on the water, and he had a very scary experience.
Wow,
that the ends of the lines weren't sewn properly. I mean, I guess that can happen with any company. It's too bad it happened with Elf, and it's too bad it happened on the kite you're actually reviewing. Bad timing, but I would give them the benefit of the doubt. The kites are so beautiful that, hey, I would just check. When you're jumping big, you got to check all your equipment extremely carefully. You know, you're putting your life in the hands of your lines and whatnot, so you don't want to be breaking a line at 50 or 60 feet, or even 20 feet for that matter. Water's really hard when you fall.
The bridles, the lines on the Elf, it doesn't look like great quality if you compare it to the Flysurfer kites, right? But you know, I you know, the Swift is version 1.0. You know, give them time. I think 2.0 would be better. They'll probably work out the kinks and stuff like that when it comes to, you know, the size of lines and things like that. So
I really like that the lines are thicker on the Soul. There's no need to make thin lines or bridles on these foil kites. It's recreational, it's not for racing. What we need is durability and not performance as much.
After the unfortunate accident with Kirill, we repaired the kite here in Toronto. We stitched a piece of the bridle that failed, and we felt confident to take the Swift kite back on the water. In fact, even Kirill himself went back on the kite without any issues. And Alexei went for a big air session where he jumped over 15 meters on the Swift as he was comparing it back to back with the Flysurfer Sonic.
So, but you trust when you jump like 15 to 20 meters on those Elf kites, you feel confident?
I jumped way over that yesterday, and I used these kites for the last 6 months at least. Not even 6 months. I started it almost a year ago. And I do trust them. They never failed me before.
Value for money.
If I would be choosing which one, I would take probably that kite because it's cheaper. But again, we don't know for how long it's gonna last, right? This one is pretty good kite. I like it. I have it.
I think I'm going to be a stickler and stick with Soul, I think. I've looked at the construction on the Elf. I'm a little curious about that versus the Soul. Yeah, for now, I think I'd still stick with the Soul overall.
for the right price, I would say it's worth getting. Personally, with me, no way. I'd stick with. I'm biased to Flysurfer.
The price point makes Elf very attractive. If the price point gets near those other kites, then I don't see the value as much.
It would be hard for me to pick a favorite, Soul versus Elf, because I love them both very much. The Elf kite, the bridles are slightly rugged looking. They're not really tapered beautifully. So there's a negative there, but other than that, I mean, I guess you get what you pay for. There's an extreme price difference, so I certainly have no complaints.
Yes, but that's not why I like them. I like the way they perform. I really enjoy the easy handling and performance at the same time. Money helps as well.
The better value for money is definitely the Elf.
Even with its bridles issues.
Even with its bridles issue. You can mitigate the bridle issues by being conscious of them.
In conclusion, most of the riders were quite impressed with the Swift Kite, most notably for its power, grunt, and of course the price point. Digging into the finer details, there was some disagreement on where the Swift Kite sits in comparison to the Soul and the Sonic when it comes to handling, turning speed, and bar pressure. While there was very little concern over the construction of the kite canopy, the bridles did cause some riders to raise their eyebrows, and in Kirill's case, a long swim to shore. Of course, personal preferences and wind conditions always play a factor in kite reviews, so that's why it's best to demo a kite if you can, so you can make up your own mind. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Have you tried the Swift Kite? And if so, what were your thoughts? As always, thank you so much for watching, and to our test riders, thank you for your input. We'll see you next time.